Brew Nation, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. It really means a lot to me. I actually got asked a question. I was holding it, because I've answered these kind of questions before, but it's what skill set do we use as clinical researchers now that AI is about to emerge? AI is basically in its infancy. What do we as clinical researchers, regardless of what domain or vertical of clinical research we are in, what should we focus on? What should we basically do to remain relevant in our careers, in our businesses, etc.? And I watched this two separate, seemingly unrelated posts, and in a strange way, in a strange loop, if you will, both posts kind of relate to each other, and I had to see all those things in order. I had to read the comment. Then I had to see this Instagram post by Ryan Holiday, who's one of my favorite authors and a modern day philosopher, basically. And then Elon Musk, like the greatest entrepreneur of our time, regardless of how you feel about him. He was on a podcast. And so I kind of absorbed all of those forms of content. And I came to this somewhat of an answer. And it's essentially what I've been saying for the last decade and a half. Be a generalist. Because the AI is going to get into every single vertical in our space, and the AI is going to do every single vertical, at least the technical stuff, better than us. So if you go all the way down the lines to drug discovery, from drug discovery to um, preclinical to animal models. I mean, maybe we won't even, the FDA's already talked about doing less animal studies, so we can kind of do research on a chip with AI to eventually like site selection, which we have several companies in these verticals working on solutions. I have one, it's called Patient Ace for patient recruitment, but on the site selection side, you have companies like Inato who sponsor this channel. There's no shortage of places where AI is already serving clients, and the clients are the drug companies at the end of the day. So whether you are a site, whether you are a CRO, whether you are a tech vendor, we are essentially service providers. And as sophisticated as we want to call ourselves, we're an integrated research organization or we're a CRO. This video is kind of also inspired by the podcast I did with Joel White, where he reviewed the quarter three earnings for the CROs. As sophisticated as we want to call ourselves or think of ourselves, at the end of the day, we are service providers to the sponsors. This is the sponsors industry. They serve ultimately the patients. So, if we want to get technical, this is the sponsors and the patients industry. We are all just part of the ecosystem. And so that means those two stakeholders make the majority of the rules, and they should. We serve the pharma companies, and the pharma companies serve the patients. That's the first principles of this scenario. Now, as soon as the pharma companies give service providers the green light to start using AI in certain verticals, which they already have. If you look at companies like Inato, who sponsor this video, if you look at companies like Creo, who also sponsor my channel, if you look at companies like Patient Ace that I'm working on with Ronick and Chris and Alexis on building and serving sites, as soon as they give us the green light to start turning on these agents, I think it's over. Like, I really think us as service providers, we've really got to get creative as far as what we do. So, if you boil down what a site does at first principles, it's enroll patients into trials, and then it's conduct the trials according to the protocol and GCP. That's it. Now, how much of those aspects can you enhance with AI? I would argue a lot. Now, how many of those things can you not enhance with AI? And Elon Musk, Ryan Holiday, they seem to agree with me, although they articulate it a lot better. We have to be, Ryan Holiday would agree with me on this, generalists. So at the times where we are discounting liberal arts degrees, for example, or we are discounting philosophy, we should actually be going more towards that because we need to learn how to look for bias. We need to learn how to become good bullshit detectors so the AIs can process data, but we have to cultivate the ability to, first of all, spot the hallucinations because there's still a lot of hallucinations when you're using these AIs, but learn how to prompt these agents so that they specifically look for what we want and nothing else. And then Elon Musk on his podcast that he was on, he mentioned three things that AI needs, that we need to program into the AI, which is kind of like his kind of what he's trying to do with XAI. But if you think about it, we humans should learn these three things, and it's truth seeking. So we need to be truth seeking. We need to understand beauty, and we need to be curious and have curiosity because the AI do not excel actually at those things. And that's where I think common sense humans are going to have to get better at these things. Now, I know common sense is not common, and I know that the more people actually end up using AI, the lazier they become, and the worse their critical thinking skills become. So that's an issue. That means that everyone's headed one way. Whenever a super technology, like this is the mega trend of our lifetime, for sure. Might be the mega trend of humanity, but it's definitely the mega trend of our lifetime. There's always resistance, and then it comes anyways. And then there's always bandwagons jumping on and just completely outsourcing all of our thinking and what it means to be human, which is really truth seeking, curiosity, and beauty, which is subjective, but even subjective beauty is more important than or better than what AI can call beautiful. And what is beautiful in the clinical research setting? It's actually empathy. It's making studies patient-centric. You know, the buzzword I hate, but now we got to do it for real. It's making analyzing the results, making them practical and pragmatic in the sense to where will this actually work in the marketplace? And having a sense of taste. So when it comes to technology vendors giving sites tools, giving sponsors tools, what is the user experience? And that's site centricity. So these are what Elon would call in his podcast beauty. And so an AI, for example, can write a protocol, but can it design a beautiful, inclusive protocol that attracts all members of society equally, right? Not just historically what we've been seeing in our clinical trials of Caucasian males. Will it attract minorities? And in a way, sites are doing this too. And so that means protocols have to get more site-centric. That means sponsors have to look for, if they want underserved patients in their trials, they've got to look at those underserved communities. And so designing your trials to be beautiful in that sense. AI can't do that yet. Now, probably the hardest part, in my opinion, of this triad is truth seeking. And this is where if we become too dependent on AI and we don't train ourselves critical thinking, we're just going to believe anything we're told. And as we've seen, AI can be very wrong. And if it gets into the wrong hands, it can manipulate people to think of, falsities that are actually they claim to be true. So, like I've been reading tons of philosophy books. Here, this is a really good one, The Construction of Social Reality. I've got this one to take on the plane with me when I go to Houston. The Blue and Brown books. These two are specifically about language and the tool, like language, it's hard for us to think about it now, but it's actually a technology. But it's all developing critical thinking. Okay, here's a book on the discovery of tumor-infiltrated lymphocytes. So I'm building domain expertise. And I'm not doing this just because I watched the podcast with Elon. Like for the past couple of years, I've been very interested in history. So whether it's business history, biographies, I've got Mark Twain's biography next I want to read, and then deep philosophical stuff. What has that done to me already? And I just got interested in this stuff. Like I'm a business person, so it's like reading a business biography. I've been doing that for a while, but Charlie Munger's book, Poor Charlie's Almanac. He was Warren Buffett's business partner until he passed away at the age of 99. He taught me about mental models. He said if you establish mental models, they're essentially critical thinking uh, software you're essentially putting in your brain. So you're cultivating a lifelong desire to learn and you're building mental models. He called it worldly wisdom, gaining worldly wisdom. I think we need to do that in our space. I think we've been in a space in clinical research where we are siloed by our by the kind of the secrecy of our industry, and definitely the importance of our industry, but all the CDAs we have to sign and just become a specialist, specialize in this and don't worry about everything else. I think that era is ending, and I think we need to go back to being generalists. I didn't say it for these reasons a decade and a half ago, but I was telling everyone to cultivate becoming a generalist because I thought that provided the best security for your job. And it turns out I was right. I didn't foresee AI coming, but I just inherently knew if you become a generalist, you become very multifaceted and good at a lot of different things. You can learn the details later. And as it turns out, you almost don't have to learn the details. You have to learn the nuances and you have to learn how these domains connect to each other. And Ryan Holiday wrote a really interesting Instagram post today, but essentially he said the essential skill of our time is to have a finely tuned bullshit detector. And he gave an example of ChatGPT combining two unrelated statistics to create a false conclusion about something. And he's saying, you know what, 99% of people who would get that result wouldn't look into it any further. And essentially AI is a confident liar. And it's our job if we want to be good at our careers and in our jobs, we got to kind of go through the struggle and figure out what's BS from what's truth. And that's Elon's truth seeking. And so the two separate posts, unrelated posts, do connect. And at least in my head, they do. And then he also said the value of being human really is going through the struggle. And if AI gives you answers to everything easily, the thinking process is annihilated. But the struggle develops character, patience, and discipline. So if you use AI to instantly do anything for you, you rob yourself of the struggle. So instead, what you should do is you definitely need to use AI. You don't want to be a Luddite, but you want to synthesize your own thoughts manually before using AI to polish. So it's okay to have AI as your research, but then continue to read in our industry full papers. So I've been telling everyone you need to understand the medical journals. You need to read the medical journals. Whether you're a coordinator, a CRA, you need to be on top of these things, even if you think your job's not related or that is a skill for other people. No, it's a skill for you. And then making the humanities, aka humans, relevant again. So, AI that will supposedly make artists, knowledge workers obsolete. It's only the ones that let themselves be made obsolete. Domain expertise and a broad kind of generalist skill set are the antidote. So don't just know one thing and that's it. I know how to run this kind of trials and that's it. I think we all need to just turn into philosophers. Understand the history of what we're doing, understand the ethics of this particular situation and the context that we have, understand what is a brute fact versus what is a social reality. That's where this book comes in, right? These are the soft skills that AI lacks, and this is what's going to give you job security, meaning, and relevance. And so again, be the truth architect. So this is from Elon. Use AI to process the data sets, but enforce a zero tolerance policy for hallucinations. You double check and be the safety brake on that. That's going to allow you to do number two, which is keep the struggle. So it's going to be a struggle to process what the AI gives you, but you're going to use it to then understand where that data came from, where the AI got it from. The moment you stop wrestling with the complexity of the space, you're going to become obsolete. Cultivate curiosity. So asking the questions is what's important. AI answers, humans ask. Continue to ask the right questions. Focus your energy on identifying the novel gaps in your field and connecting the different parts of the field. This is the only way you're going to be able to do that is become a generalist. And then embrace the analog, which in the age of digital, where you just tune in your dial somewhere, it's binary. Analog, remember the analog radios where you have to tune it with your fingers and you can kind of go in between the radio stations and you get some white noise, you get some static, you get a little bit more of one or the other, and then you finally got it. That slowness in this analogy is the slowness of your own research, which is allowing you to figure out the beauty and the creativity that the fast, high-speed AI processing misses, and it allows you to keep the struggle going and recursively cultivate that curiosity, which ultimately leads to truth and job relevance, career relevance. Hopefully, this helps. If you need some humility in your life, just realize we're all service providers to the pharma companies. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye bye.